my passion is for children to understand that it's not about them, that their lovability, they deserve love, they are amazing. If other people struggle to show that, that's their issues, not yours. Okay. And to try and understand that it's not about who you are, it's about who they are. That's the key.
Samantha, would you like to introduce yourself? I believe you work in mental health and well-being. Is that correct?
And yeah, I do. So I work in mainly education. My official title is a mental health and inclusion consultant. So having worked as a special needs coordinator and also being sort of a qualified mental health person, I can do the link between the two, because there is such a massive link between special needs and mental health as well, and inclusion.
Could you talk about that link between special needs and mental health and inclusion?
Well, the key, I mean, the thing is, children with special needs it's estimated 6 times more likely to have a mental health issue, and because of a variety of reasons that I can talk about. But so I think to have the crossover and to understand the impact of being neurodiverse on your mental health is a really good thing. And a lot of times we overlook it. It's like, okay, well, let's support the dyslexia. Yeah, but you've also got to support the mental health and the complications associated with that for them because of how society is.
Does the mental health complicate the dyslexia, or the dyslexia complicate the mental health, or what's the relationship then?
Most of the relationship kind of is that the mental health is like a secondary factor because of the disability or the neurodiversity. And that's not to say it's a predeterminate and it's definitely going to happen, but it is at a higher risk because, you know, you have more negative life experiences when you're neurodiverse, and life is set up for very well for society isn't very good, and education isn't very good for SEN.
So I was going to ask, what are the connections between special educational needs and mental health problems? Is it that there's bullying, or is it that people with special educational needs can't handle mental health trauma in the same way that other people can? What's going on there?
Well, it's sort of a combination of factors. Definitely the neurodiversity affects that, because your brain is wired differently and than a neurotypical brain. You know, it means that some coping with emotions is more challenging and more difficult. Some of it is, and I think a lot of it is people's attitudes when you're young to it, you know, that you can't do it and we don't explain it very well. And, you know, just as I'm a left-hander, and growing up through school, well, everything was for right-handed people. Okay, now that was a minor thing, but that's just an example of the negative experiences that you have, that you're different, that you stand out, and you know, that's not good. And the whole education system currently really isn't very good for neurodiverse children.
Could you say a little bit more about that? What do you mean when you say that?
So it used to be that we had a lot more vocational qualifications. Mm-hmm. We also had modular exams. So they took exams throughout sort of year 10 and 11. Now we have very academic based. We have a high prevalence of marking on spelling, punctuation and grammar, even though all adults use spell check on their computers. And we have a reduction in vocational skills and even to the extent of, I know they're going to review this currently, but requiring a good grade in English and maths to get an apprenticeship. Well, traditionally an apprenticeship route was for people who were more vocational and hands-on. So, you know, there's definitely been a change in the last 15 years that has negatively impacted SEN students.
You say in the last 15 years. Now, I like to be quite inclusive in the work that I do, and I don't like to take sides, one side or the other. But can I draw maybe a connection between?
Michael Gove started it all off. It is. We have to be honest.
Yeah.
you know, the Tory government changed how it works.
Yeah.
And I think they're recognizing it hasn't worked and they're changing the system. But yeah, we have to be honest that it began with the Michael Gove changes.
Yeah. There's been a big party political influence.
Yes.
And this actually has an influence on the mental health outcomes of dyslexic and neurodiverse children.
Absolutely, 100%. If the whole thing that you are valued on is set up for people other than you, and we mistake academic ability for intelligence, then the whole thing is wrong, isn't it? It's going to affect you.
And have you noticed, I mean, I don't know whether you keep track of people as they get older and enter the world of work, but have you noticed the connection between, let's say, mental health and neurodiversity and the academic system and levels of what we classically call success or achievement? Once you go up in the school ladder and then maybe beyond that.
I mean, unfortunately, because I'm kind of working more in consultancy, I don't get to track a lot of children through. But the research does very much suggest that the outcomes are poorer, and we know that the divide is growing greater, unfortunately, rather than closing. So, you know, there is a wealth of research out there to support what I'm saying and what your view is as well, Martin, that it's not good. And that's why the government, with their latest sort of SEND review, are looking at changing some elements and bringing in more vocational qualifications and reducing the level of qualifications needed for apprenticeships.
Yeah. And is there anything that you think should be done beyond this to tackle the mental health epidemic, let's be honest, among neurodiverse children?
Yeah, I think it's a big push, and I know you're the same, that our workplaces and our school environments need to be more inclusive. We need to be more flexible. We need to have more equity of access. We need for children not to feel different and to stand out. We need to be providing a whole, you know, assistive technology is incredibly massive, and yet we've still got schools banning any technology at all. Yeah. And yet we all use technology. Yeah. So we are doing, I heard somebody, Dr. Luke Roberts, once talk about the digital divide, that there is going to be a divide between technological knowledge and accessibility and none.
Yeah, and this will create an injustice, which is an
ethical. Yes, it will. Yeah. It's going to harm neurodiverse people more.
Do you have any statistics, or at least anecdotal statistics, or sort of what you've seen of mental health problems and among dyslexic or neurodiverse children, and self-harm, and maybe even beyond self-harm to attempted suicide?
I don't have any specific statistics to do with that, because very often a lot of the research is done doesn't necessarily look at whether there was an SEND that was involved. But I know that a while ago that there was a research study done on young people who had taken their own lives, and it was found that a third of them had like a physical, somehow they were physically different from other people, and so that sort of is an element of there. But a lot of it as well, a lot of them, there was, I think for a quarter of them, social isolation was a big factor.
I mean, does bullying play a part in this?
Bullying is huge. So SEN children are more likely to be bullied. Neurodiverse children are also more likely to somehow struggle socially. And we do know that your peer groups and socially are incredibly important to you as adolescents. They're more important than anything else, your peer groups. So bullying is huge, and a lot of adults that I speak to talk about being bullied as a child. And one of the things I talk about is, are you good enough with your bullying policy in school? You know, and any school that says that we don't have bullying, it's like, well, you shouldn't be looking after children, because you do. You're just denying it. And actually bullying is quite interesting. So do you know, or have you experienced, or have you noticed any difference in levels of or types of bullying with boys and girls? So how they bully tends to be a little bit different.
Right.
First of all, we know that despite online social media use, face-to-face bullying still has more impact than the online world, and that boys tend to be more blatant and almost physical, whereas girls tend to be more subversive and bullying by exclusion, or bullying by spreading rumors and that sort of thing. So they do kind of do things differently.
Yeah, and the effects, are the effects equally devastating, or
huge? To be different, to not, I mean, I had conversations with you, Martin, didn't I, in the Dyslexia show, and the people on the table, and for very few people is school an enjoyable experience, and the stigma stays for such a long time that that it hurts, and it is a trauma, and our primal desire is to be loved and to belong. And if we're not at the most formative years in our life, that's hard to sort of move away from when you get older. So we know that bullying is huge, and it's one of my big things that I talk about when I talk about schools, and I go, you've got to be good at bullying and dealing with bullying and not pretending, and you've got to be good at giving neurodiverse children safe places at break and lunchtime when it's more likely to happen, and to allow them to just be okay where they are, sort of thing.